Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for finding us on your favorite podcast app, whether that's Apple or Android. You can also find us on the Nothing But Net channel on Dash Radio. So download the Dash Radio app for free. Search for Nothing But Net. We're there every day, Eastern Time, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And, of course, Pacific Time, 7 to 8 a.m. Also, check out fivereasonsports.com. Spell it out, F-I-V-E, reasonsports.com. That's where you can find all of our free South Florida sports content, not just the Heat, but also the Dolphins at 1-3, the Hurricanes 7th in the country now in both polls as they prepare for Clemson, the Marlins playing the Braves in the first round, Inter Miami, and more. Also, our YouTube channel, now over 7,000 subscribers, new shows going up there all the time, as well as a lot of the Zoom videos with the various athletes and coaches in town. So make sure that you check that out. And all the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network, all of them are local. We encourage you to reach out to them, including our friend Mark Brown. You can find him at markbrownpa.com. Call the office 954-566-5678. This is a real estate litigation and transaction law firm in both commercial and residential with a full-service attorney-owned title company. $295 closing fee on all refinances and purchases. When mentioning Five Reasons, they handle evictions for both landlords and tenants, and they offer flat fee evictions. Practicing for nearly 15 years. Again, it's Mark, M-A-R-C, brownpa.com. Call the office, 954-566-5678. Mention Five Reasons, $295 closing fee. So, of course, tell them that we sent you. And now, today's episode.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5
on the floor.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily show on the Miami Heat and the NBA featuring Ethan Skolnick with Alphonse Sidney, Alex Toledo, and Greg Sylvander. Part of the Five Reasons Sports Network.
All right, Ethan Skolnick back on Five on the Floor. Make sure to check out our other preview episodes. Alex, myself, Greg, Alf. We previewed Game 4, obviously looked back at what's going to be known, I guess, as the Jimmy Butler game. Also, we put up another episode with some of the press conferences, the Zoom press conferences from yesterday, which included Jimmy Butler, Erik Spoelstra, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Goran Dragic, and Bam Adebayo. Now my next guest was actually in the bubble for quite a while, from the beginning until through the end of the first round of the playoffs. Worked at Cleveland.com for a while. I got to know him the year that I was up covering LeBron in Cleveland, 14-15, and he has since moved on to The Athletic. We're going to just focus on LeBron here. I know, Joe, that is a new thing for you. You've never been asked to do that before. I've got Joe Vardon with me. You can follow him on Twitter at Joe Vardon. It's completely different. This is going to be totally out of the box for you.
Okay, I'm ready to roll. You know, I was listening to your read-in, and I was just thinking, I knew you when you were just the national NBA writer, and now look, you're an entrepreneur. It's amazing.
I don't know if it's necessarily a step up, but it's working. And actually, the Heat have helped. So I want to thank the Miami Heat for doubling our YouTube numbers and our subscriber numbers over the past 3 weeks. So whatever Riley Arison and the like are doing, it's been helpful to us. Let's dig into LeBron. Heat fans have a complicated relationship with LeBron. There is, among most of them, appreciation for what he accomplished here, the 4 finals, the 2 championships. There was some disgust at the way that he left, and kind of some things that happened with Riley, who obviously is beloved down here, and some of the others in the organization on the way out the door. I feel like some of that had healed over the past few years, a little bit more appreciation on both sides. And now, Joe, down here in Fort Lauderdale, South Florida, I feel it coming back again. That Heat fans, they don't really love the antics in this series, the whining to the refs. They were okay with it, I think, when he was playing on the Heat. But some of that stuff, and then the comments yesterday kind of implying that he doesn't talk trash, but other players have to do that to get themselves up for it. Generally, what do you think his approach to this series has been? And where do you think his head's at right now at 2-1 in the series in the NBA Finals?
Well, I think I would start with I can't remember if he said this immediately after Game 3 or if he said it yesterday. I think it's the former. But he said he dropped a "we're not concerned," which he's done before in his career. I think he did that to the Raptors, if I'm not mistaken. They had blown a 2-0 lead and had lost both games in Toronto. I think this might have even been the championship year. And his response was, no, we're not concerned. I mean, you have a series tied at 2. There's 3 games left, and just totally brushed them off. And I think he kind of did that to the Heat here. Now, the reason why he would feel so comfortable in doing that is that Anthony Davis just wasn't very good in Game 3. And I know LeBron wasn't great either. He had 8 turnovers and was kind of back to the old LeBron in terms of not playing defense and missing rotations and just screaming at teammates. Like, he hadn't really done that for the Lakers this year. So, I think if you're a Heat fan and you're hearing this and you're seeing this, and then you have, I think the other thing is you have a guy, at least one, who's shown that he wants to rise up to the challenge, and that's Jimmy Butler. So I think you add all of those things together, and yeah, it would rub you the wrong way. I've spent a lot of time in this series thinking about what would this be like. Now, don't laugh, but if the Cavs were actually in the finals now, I can't. I mean, that'll be decades, but just from an emotional standpoint, I don't think people could handle it. Even though now, by and large, everybody here is fine that he's gone, and so it makes sense to me for what's happening in Miami. But I don't think LeBron, to answer your last question, I don't think he's worried. He knows his 1A played, one of his worst games in a while. Mm-hmm. And he actually kind of called him out on it. So I think the Lakers still feel pretty good about where they are.
So I have a general idea about how he feels about certain people that are involved in this series. But you may have a better idea because you were around him a little bit more afterwards. So I don't know what he discussed relative to any of this afterwards. So let me give you some names and you tell me your impression of what he thinks of them. Pat Riley.
Yeah, I mean, I think that he's always going to harbor that grudge and was upset over the lack of respect he felt that Pat showed him upon leaving. But LeBron used that, I think, as internal motivation. He told that to our friend Dave McMenamin once. And, he won in 16. So, in effect, proving Pat wrong. So I don't mean to say LeBron is over it, but I think some time has healed that wound to a degree. It's not like the way LeBron looks at Phil Jackson, for instance.
So it's not like someone who made a posse comment. Because when I was up there in 14-15, I've told this on 5 on the Floor, so people are kind of tired of it, but LeBron used to ask me about Pat. Like the one day that Pat made the comment about hidden faces, or smiling faces with hidden agendas, which was really in reference to trying to re-sign Dragic. But he was comparing Dragic to what they dealt with the previous summer. And as I've told, I watched that from, a pizza place in downtown Cleveland, went out to Independence. I think you were actually the one who asked him about it. Is that,
sure.
is that right? I believe.
Of course.
So. It sounds like you. You asked him about it, and then after he kind of danced around it, he pulled me aside afterwards on his way out to the court and said, "What the F did Riles say now?" And when I tried to explain it as he was walking away, he mentioned the Muhammad Ali cover with the arrows going through it. He had the cover wrong, which a lot of people would, is actually the Esquire cover, but I think he said New York Times Magazine. And, as he was being persecuted by Pat. That's kind of, until the McMenamin comment, that's really the last that I'd sort of heard of it. I know in Pat's case, because I did, long interviews with Pat about this, that there was enormous frustration with him towards LeBron. Do you think that there is respect there at all, though? Like, do you think he respects Pat?
So, I mean, just so people can understand, by accident, I really prepared for this interview. I've spent the morning reading every word said by and about LeBron in the finals, both sides. And in reading LeBron's comments in this finals, he continues to quote Pat. LeBron has said, let's keep the main thing, since the day he left the Heat. He said it for 4 years here in Cleveland, and now he's saying it all the time with the Lakers. You know, I mean, I still spend a lot of time around them in Los Angeles and elsewhere. He says it every chance he gets, and now in the bubble and in the finals, he repeatedly says, let's keep the main thing the main thing. And where did he learn that? He learned it from Pat. So the answer to your question is yes, there is respect there. And the simple proof is you do not walk around quoting someone that you don't have respect for.
Well, that's true. And the main thing that is like the ultimate Pat, the Rileyism. He also has quoted lots of Spoisms over the years. And I feel like the respect for Erik came faster. Maybe that's because he had the fighter pilot David Blatt as his first post Spoelstra quote. But I actually felt like, you know, he knew he was going to get asked all these questions before the finals started. He was clearly annoyed by the questions when he did the Zoom call the other day, but I thought he handled it generally fine. I know some of my co-hosts didn't like it, but knowing like LeBron, that was his attempt not to be passive aggressive kind of, and it still came off passive aggressive. But I thought that the Spoelstra comments, although weird in some way, because he was saying that we don't give him credit, which again, it was LeBron who kind of didn't really want to play for Spo initially here. I thought his comments for Spo were a little bit more genuine than maybe they are for Pat. Has he ever talked to Spoelstra about to you about Spoelstra?
No, he hasn't. And I mean, I would say, so what is it's been, I guess, 6 years now, right? Since LeBron left Miami. And if he spent 10 minutes with Erik Spoelstra in those last 6 years, that would be a lot. There isn't that much of a relationship there. But at the same time, as of course everyone down there realizes, they did win twice and go to 4 finals. So it's much more, you know, having kind of been through it with Erik and looking back fondly on him, which LeBron does that. I mean, LeBron now speaks very highly of Mike Brown, who was his coach here the first time he went to the finals in Cleveland in 2007. And I mean, Mike lost his job here at the end of the 10 season, basically because, you know, he couldn't win with LeBron and LeBron hadn't really embraced him by the end. And so LeBron does this. He, when he has time away, he can look back and speak like this of Spoelstra. It's interesting talking to people around LeBron during this series. One of the things that they feel like that needs to be corrected is that it wasn't that LeBron was giving Erik a hard time. It was that no one wanted to play for him, or that everybody was having like these issues with the quote Heat culture. And I do, at some level, that's nonsense. But because of course LeBron was harder on Erik than anybody, and felt that he had built the cachet to be able to do that. But when you think about the Heat and you think about Heat culture, which is something people talk about all the time, it does emanate from Pat. And Erik is a lieutenant, right? A chief lieutenant in the Heat, in Heat culture. And so when you're LeBron and Bosh and whoever else being forced to go to these like public events that they make you do with the Heat and show up early for practice like they make you do, I mean, how, you know, I guess you take that out on Erik at the time because he's the one like talking to you at the end of practice, but I think it still goes back to Pat. And so, you know, if I had to say which of the two, like LeBron still kind of looks at with a raised eyebrow, I think it would be Pat. I think the respect he has for both guys, sure, but I think maybe the admiration that you heard the other day towards Spoelstra was genuine.
Yeah, I think he views Erik as maybe a Warner person, although it's funny. Pat has mellowed so much over the years and has become, you know, much more – this is one of the reasons I think he was so frustrated the way LeBron left is he's become much more sentimental. And that was one of the things he talked about when LeBron left is we're all going to be here, you know, having barbecues with our families for the next 10 years. And LeBron never really bought into that because he's got his own quote unquote family. He has his team, he has his group that he's with. And I don't think the two ever totally match. It's interesting when you say LeBron had to kind of be the point person because I perceived that more at the end. The last year, everybody was tired of Spo. They were. I mean, Ray Allen was tired of Spo. I mean, UD was tired of Spo. They were all tired. They were tired of each other. It wasn't just, you know, and it's the quote that Dwayne gave me after the 2000 after the 14 finals and way after LeBron left, where he said, last year wasn't fun. And that got a lot of attention because Dwayne had never really sort of said that publicly before, but we knew that. Like Shane Battier wanted to retire the first day at training camp in 14. Okay.
Right.
Ray was furious. Rio was not happy. Chris Anderson knew he was going to get let go. I mean, they just weren't happy. And that happens. I mean, you probably experienced some of that in Cleveland. I mean, at the end, nobody's happy. That's how these mini dynasties work. It even happened in Golden State. But one more, and then I want to get to this series. What does he think of Jimmy Butler? Because he's always spoken really highly of Jimmy. Heat fans have embraced Jimmy because in a lot of ways, my co-host Greg Sylvander, I thought, made a great comparison last night, which I wish I'd thought of. In Heat history, LeBron is Shaq and Jimmy is Zoe. Like, Jimmy embodies all the Heat culture stuff, and it's like Jimmy is authentic, like Zoe is authentic. Shaq and LeBron are more, even though all four of guys came from somewhere else, right? Alonzo came from Charlotte and Jimmy came from 3 other places. Shaq, obviously LA, and LeBron, Cleveland. LeBron and Shaq felt borrowed, like, sort of concerned about their images, all that sort of stuff, the way that they're perceived. Whereas Jimmy and Zoe are just like, this is me. And,
right.
and Heat culture is very, this is me. Like, we are what we are. We don't really give a bleep what you think, to the point that Erik Spoelstra is cursing at every press conference, which is fascinating to me because that's the Spoelstra I know, but it's not the one he has shown to the world until recently, where he sounds like Jimmy Butler. We don't give a shit what anybody thinks. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to think of Spo saying that during the Big Three era. He's grown into his own skin. But I'm fascinated by the Jimmy LeBron thing, because Jimmy is one of the few guys in the league who would go at LeBron the way he did the other night and just not give a bleep. And how does LeBron – most guys don't do that. Like, usually it's like the Lance Stevensons, like the clowns of the world who've done that. But this is a legitimate all-star who doesn't – so he respects LeBron, but he doesn't worship at the altar of LeBron. What does he think of Jimmy Butler?
Yeah, I think, and I'm glad you've gone there, because the Heat roster, just like at the top, the Heat roster has players that have histories with LeBron, and so I'm glad we're going to go beyond the 2 guys that he played for. Jimmy is the first one, and there is a history with Jae Crowder for sure. And then Kelly Olynyk too, is, and then of course Andre Iguodala. So there's 4 guys that we can talk about. Jimmy, the way LeBron's going to look at him is he's going to base it all starting with 2015. You were there. I think you were sitting right next to me. Game 4, LeBron turned and hit that shot over him on the left baseline, United Center in Chicago, and totally changed that series. The Bulls did not win another game. And so that is the prism through which LeBron views Jimmy. Very nice player, great competitor, could never beat LeBron in the playoffs, just never could do it. And so there isn't going to be, at least there wasn't, like some of this like rivalry stuff that LeBron always tries to play down, but does exist with him and some guys. That's not Jimmy for LeBron. I am aware, obviously, that there was a little bit of a back and forth the other night in Game 3, and I think the way this will evolve, and let's hope that I'm not wrong and they get in like a fist fight or something tonight. But I don't think that the talk is going to be what draws them to each other or what elevates them in each other's eyes. It's going to be, can Jimmy sustain this and continue to go at LeBron and get another win, make this series interesting. Jimmy certainly has LeBron's respect, but it's not it's just, LeBron has beat him in every way that you can to this point, and so that's how he's going to approach this.
That shot pretty much ended the Bulls. It pretty much ended the Bulls. That was, they pretty much quit after that, and I don't think it was Jimmy that quit, but it was some other guys on that team, and so yeah, LeBron is responsible for so many sort of budding, contenders falling apart, whether it was those Pacers teams with Hibbert and West and Paul George, or those Bulls teams. And obviously that's a similarity he has with Jordan, because Jordan did it to the Knicks. He did it to the Pacers. He did it to so many other teams. But yeah, I think he views, like you said, I think he views Jimmy as a player who's between 10 and 20 in the league, who can have a night, who will compete with him, but is not on the Curry level, is not, and I know he has obviously mixed feelings about Steph, but not on the KD level, not on the AD level, right? And maybe even in some sense not on the Russ level, although I think we should reevaluate that one. But I don't think he views Jimmy quite there. You mentioned a couple others before we go to break. Obviously, the Olynyk thing goes back to Kevin Love and the playoffs. But I'm curious about the relationship with Jae Crowder, because Jae has spoken highly of LeBron, said, he's the guy you got to go through. But that whole thing in Cleveland Jae didn't play particularly well in Cleveland. Like, it's probably the worst he's played, right? I mean, between Boston, Utah, and obviously he's been great in Miami. He's been terrific in Miami. But he didn't play real well as a Cav, did he?
No, it was a terrible time for Jae here. And it was, it was a terrible, you said that in year 4 of the Heatles, everybody was sick of each other. And here in Cleveland in year 4, Kyrie was gone. They had to trade him. They chose to trade him anyway. And Jae was among the players who came over, and Isaiah Thomas was busted by then already. And so he's not even out there. And then in addition to that, Jae Crowder just wasn't good. And so LeBron had to look at him every day and watch this, and think about, this is what we got for Kyrie. And so, the frustration there was real. And Jae, there certainly was no love lost between them as the year went along. And Jae, I mean, he was among the, I think, 7 players the Cavs traded at the trade deadline that year. I mean, you think about it, they literally had to trade half their roster. And
including Dwayne. Including
Dwayne, which is, I still, even to this day, like, I think about that, how the Cavs traded LeBron's best friend, which I think raises a number of questions on.
Well, I want to stop you there before we get into Jae, because that trade, in a lot of ways, in my view, is responsible for where the Heat are now. I was going to write about that, so I'm glad you reminded me. Because if Dwayne is not traded back, and that was basically Andy Ellisberg and Kobe Altman just like off the cuff, like Kobe was like, "We'll send you Dwayne," and he was like, really? And Andy went to Dwayne, went to Spo, and Spo thought he was kidding. Like, what is it? But the reality of it is, Joe, if that trade doesn't happen, okay, if Dwayne doesn't come back, get back in the good graces with the organization, make this kind of a, because this place for a couple of years, I mean, it was Whiteside land. I mean, this is, which is a wasteland, okay? and it was not a place that looked like a desirable destination anymore, which was amazing, because this has always been a desirable destination, and it had run-ins with all of its best players on the way out the door, including Bosch, that one was not the Heat's fault, and I think even Chris would acknowledge that now. But obviously things didn't end well with Dwayne, but they were able to bring him back, have a homecoming. He wins a playoff game, right? Mm-hmm. Then he has this kind of amazing last season, even though they don't make the postseason, but where he's celebrated everywhere. It makes the Heat look like this incredibly welcoming, warm, family organization again. Jimmy Butler, who happens to be here for the very last home game that Dwayne Wade plays, and there's a famous picture of him sitting with Dwayne at the scorer's table. Jimmy is overwhelmed by what the Heat did to send Dwayne off. That plays into his decision to come here. That sets up everything that happens. So to be honest, Kobe Altman, and I'm a personal fan of Kobe, he deserves a playoff share. Like, if that doesn't happen, I don't know that the Heat look like the Heat. If this is still the place that Dwayne was pissed off leaving, is Jimmy here? Probably not, right?
Right.
Does this look like an organization that anybody wants to join? Probably not. Is Pat done? Maybe. I mean, that trade, like the Dwayne Wade trade, we don't talk about it enough. And for a second-round pick, did that pick even ever register? Did they ever end up with anything out of that?
I mean, if it did, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you what it was. And, from a basketball standpoint, Dwayne was having a very good year that year in the role that he sort of fit into here in Cleveland. And all along, he was signed. The reason he was said to have been brought here was that come a finals against the Warriors, you would need more players who kind of know what they're doing and can create on their own, especially off the bench, which the Cavs had struggled with, the previous year in the finals there. And Dwayne fit that perfectly and was a glaring hole on the Cavs team when they actually got to the finals. He along with Isaiah Thomas were the two people who went at Kevin Love over what turned out to be a panic attack, and that totally ripped the room apart. That team never recovered, led to the giant number of trades. And so Dwayne was a part of that. But then also it just and this is like the chess piece that I can't quite put my finger on. You don't trade LeBron's best friend ever, especially if you're trying to keep him. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that they did it, did the Cavs ever really expect that they were going to keep LeBron? Are LeBron and Dwayne, were they as close then as we were all led to believe? I don't know. I think there is an answer there that goes beyond the cookie cutter stuff. But yeah, I mean, the Heat were in some kind of way before that, and certainly, absolutely sparked a renaissance and just kind of like that feel-good vibe toward the Heat that hadn't been there, no doubt.
Yeah, I wonder what Dan Gilbert thinks of that now, because I mean, Dan Gilbert did more to take the Heat off the rails than anybody else in the league, whether it was some of the complaining and to get the rules that the way they were with obviously, him calling it unfair and the sign and trades and all the draft picks the Heat had to give up, and then ending up getting LeBron and not having to do any of that and all the other stuff that happened, and then essentially gives the Heat a lifeline for a rebirth by trading them back their franchise icon. It was appreciated down here, and I understand the human sentiment of it, that give Dwayne, let Dwayne go to a place where he's comfortable after he had, again, both things that happened, him getting traded, but also the fact that he went to Chicago in the first place, which is where he and Jimmy started talking about the Heat. If those two things don't happen, him going to Chicago, him going to Cleveland and getting traded from Cleveland, none of this is happening in my view. All right, I want to get to LeBron's legacy stuff. We're going to close with that. Before we do, though, I want to tell you about another great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network, and that's mybookie.ag. Unless you've been living under a rock, the NFL is back. NBA playoffs are in full swing, which can mean only one thing. It's winning season at MyBookie. I don't know about you guys, but for me, a game's 10 times more exciting when I put money on it, especially because I'm 7 for my last 7. I'm not going to say who I like tonight because the Heat fans are going to get upset at me. Regardless, whether you've been betting for years or you're ready to play for the first time, MyBookie is your best bet this season. With the biggest online selection of bets and props, they've made it simple to win and easy to withdraw your cash. Right now, they've got a $100,000 super contest for only a $10 entry, and they're giving away $5,000 in cash prizes every 4 weeks. You'd be crazy not to invest in your sports knowledge with that kind of potential return on your investment. $10 to win thousands. Sign me up. You too can sign up in MyBookie. Use the promo code 5 to claim your 100% deposit match. That's a 100% deposit match with the code 5 all the way up to $1,000. That means if you put 100 in, they'll give you another 100. It's an easy way to jumpstart your bankroll. NFL, NBA, and MLB, they got it all on tap. It's never too late to get started on your winning season, especially at mybookie.ag. All right, let's close here, Joe. This has been a weird deal. The bubble's been a weird deal. I have sort of joked that ESPN is only going to consider this a legitimate championship if LeBron wins it. If the Heat wins it, there's going to forever be an asterisk. I mean, maybe there will be an asterisk for some if LeBron wins it. What do you think this particular championship would mean to LeBron?
Well, I'm going to take issue with taking a title away from or putting an asterisk on anybody who wins this, including the Heat, because the conditions were the same for everyone. And, just because this wasn't like a regular NBA year, everyone had to kind of go through the same set of challenges. And, like with any regular NBA season, it is how you handle those challenges throughout the course of a year. I mean, you have a tough travel schedule in the finals, so be it. Or in the conference finals, we'll say, so be it. Like the other side doesn't, you got to find a way to get through it. And so here, you had to find a way to get through the isolation and the rules and just kind of the weirdness of it all. And so the Heat, I had written that I thought the Heat might because of Heat culture, that they were kind of like a dark horse to maybe get really far in the Eastern Conference. So kudos to them if they're able to turn this around. Wanted to say that. But when you get to LeBron and the legacy stuff, and I had written this at The Athletic, when he left Cleveland, not just after having won in 16, but then also the way he went out in 18, he played in all 108 games. He dragged a franchise that was so in disarray already that they had to trade half the players. And he dragged them back to the finals. He won 2 Game 7s in the process. Like, his legacy was cemented. And he had gone to a place in Los Angeles where, sure, he could win another title, but if he did, he would just be joining the very, very long line of legends there, from Kobe and Shaq to Magic and Worthy to Kareem and Wilt and Jerry West and on down the line. Just, he would have been joining something that wasn't his. And then this year comes along, and it's so weird and it's so tragic. And not to mention, they got caught in a political upheaval in China, of all places. And now you have to say, well, wait a minute, this is different. And then I also add into that, like, to make sure the Lakers got this far, like, LeBron changed who he is. You know, he is not the scowling, like, intimidating inside his own locker room, you know, pouting at times, like icing out coaches like that. That's who he had. That's kind of what he learned and who he was with the Heat. And he brought all that to Cleveland, and it worked. But he has totally embraced Anthony Davis and totally allowed Frank Vogel to coach this team, and doesn't pick on Kuzma anymore, and doesn't throw a fit when KCP or Danny Green miss wide open threes like he used to do to everybody all the time. So you add all that in, and I do think this changes his legacy. And I think, you know, I don't like the Michael Jordan stuff. If you want to tell me Michael was better than LeBron, fine. But leading 3 different teams to titles is significant. Going to 10 finals is significant, and 9 out of the last 10 is outrageous. And the thing I always say is, like, being Michael and being LeBron it's unlike anything that almost anybody else can compare. And Michael needed to quit twice after 3 finals runs. Mm-hmm. That's all he could handle from a stress standpoint. And you cannot argue that point. Whereas LeBron went to 8 straight, and now he's in his 9th out of 10 years, and he's still going strong. Like, so I really credit LeBron for that. I think it's a huge notch in his belt when it comes to this argument. And yeah, if they're able to close this out, it does change LeBron's legacy and adds to it for sure.
All right, 30 seconds. Does he finish his career with the Lakers?
Yeah, I think so. Unless you really start getting silly with the whole Bronny thing, if Bronny's actually good enough to make the NBA, one, but he's not going to rip his family out of Los Angeles. That's not going to happen. And he wants his kids to go to school there, and he doesn't want to be away from his kids. So I say yes.
All right. Joe Vardon, follow him on Twitter, his work at The Athletic. We appreciate you taking the time. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Regional Sports Network.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5
on the floor.